I wish I had maybe gotten a little bit more exposure to Gullah Geechee culture, but
Mm.
I think I've been learning so much now as an adult and realizing that I had maybe even just kind of like the ways how some of my family members would speak. It kind of like I was like, wow, I didn't think much of it, but that was actually like Creole forms in their English. On today's episode, I'll be talking to Maggie about Gullah Geechee. You are watching Culture on CharisMaggietv.
know we do it for the culture. You know we do it for the culture.
What up, everyone? CharisMaggie here, and welcome back to another episode of Culture. Today, I am here joined by a guest who actually reached out to me, and I'm glad they did because for the longest, I have been looking for people to come on so we can finally showcase some English based Creole languages. I have with me today Mark. He is a podcast host and YouTuber for the platform called Creole Explained. So if you're someone who's interested in getting to know a bit more about Creole languages, just like myself, I'm going to link all his information in the description box for you to check out. But thank you so much for being here with me, Mark.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me.
No problem. So, of course, before I dive into everything, I am always curious when I meet new people, especially those who are like interested in Creole languages like myself. You have a YouTube channel, so I'm kind of curious to know what was the thing that motivated you then to start this YouTube channel and podcast called Creole Explained.
I think for me, it was really just like the fact that I was dealing with a lot of things that had to deal with Creole culture. They were centered around Creole culture, and a lot of people didn't really maybe understand it. They didn't have an understanding of what Creole languages were, what Creole culture was. So I was like, I might as well start it. I think my work in genealogy really contributed to that as well. I was doing a lot of research on uh, French Creole people, and so that definitely made me want to, I guess, share everything that I've learned. I've been in, I grew up around French Creole culture, English Creole culture, like, so I just figured,
Mm.
why not just share all of this?
Awesome. Okay, that's interesting. And it's interesting that you mentioned that because today we're going to be talking specifically about Gullah Geechee, which is an English-based Creole language, and we're going to dive a bit more into it. But you mentioned that you were surrounded by, French Creole culture and English Creole culture. Tell me about what that is exactly. Like, was it family members? Was it just where you lived?
Yeah. So, my family is pretty diverse. Where I have, my mom's side is French Creole, and then on my dad's side, that's where we have the Gullah Geechee. We have Caribbean people as well. So, and for me, I am from a region of New York that's known as Little Guyana, and so when I was growing up, I grew up around Guyanese culture. And then when I moved to an area that was also very, well, more Afro Caribbean. So I was around a lot of Jamaicans, a lot of Haitians. And so it's kind of like I feel like all my life I've been around, that type of culture. I wish I had maybe gotten a little bit more exposure to Gullah Geechee culture. But
Mm.
I think I've been learning so much now as an adult and realizing that I had maybe even just kind of like the ways how some of my family members would speak. It kind of like I was like, wow, I didn't think much of it, but that was actually like Creole forms in their English.
Got you. Ah, we have a lot of similarities. So it's kind of the reverse for me in some sort of way. So you got the privilege of, growing around persons who are Guyanese. A lot of people don't know this because of my accent, but I was actually born in Guyana and I left very young. And so that part of the culture in terms of the language itself, I know there is Guyanese Creole. I don't really know much except for like skunt. Like that's the only
It's just the bad words, right?
just the bad words. That's the only word I know. So, it's been interesting, to just meet people and like hearing your diverse background. I'm looking forward to our conversation that will be happening today. So let's dive into that convo right now. So we're going to be talking about specifically Gullah Geechee today, and during our conversation, we're going to be connecting it to West Indian or other Caribbean English-based Creole languages. So as you're hearing us speak, that's what we'll be focusing on today. Because as you all know, I have featured a lot of French-based Creole languages on the channel, and the point is to eventually showcase as many of them as possible from the different languages that they are stemmed from or whatever. So Gullah Geechee. I will admit, I've seen a couple YouTube videos and it instantly kind of reminds me of Belize because I lived in Belize for a while. So I'm actually curious to know if you could give me a brief history of Gullah Geechee, where is it usually spoken about? Any little history that you can tell us.
Yeah, so I think, when people think of Gullah, when people think of Geechee, the first thing that probably comes to their mind is South Carolina, but it's actually a corridor. So it stretches from, the southern part of North Carolina all the way down to the northern part of Florida, and it's a court. So it's very skinny region, just the coastal regions of the southern part of the United States that essentially they were settled by Africans, and their descendants that were pretty isolated, especially on the islands that are off the coast of the southern United States. And since they were isolated, they were allowed to preserve and they were able to just keep a lot of African culture in the form of, just things like even religion, but also like the way they spoke. And that's what allowed, the Creole language, Gullah, to really kind of form. So I think that is the main part. Specifically in terms of South Carolina, what's interesting is that the first settlements of South Carolina were actually people who came from Barbados. So that's already a connection right there. They came from
Oh,
Barbados. Yeah, so it was Englishmen who brought enslaved people from Barbados, and they settled in, the Charleston area. And then eventually more Africans came later, and it all kind of contribute. It was a lot of isolation. Yeah. So, but that's essentially the brief history.
wow. So I want to make sure I'm getting this right. Is
Hmm.
Gullah Geechee like two different languages or is it one language? I think that's what
It's
I get mixed up on sometimes.
Yeah, it's just one. I some people say that the people more north prefer Gullah, and then the people more south prefer to identify as Geechee. So people kind of like combine them, Gullah Geechee.
Ah,
But
gotcha.
in my family, I've heard people use them interchangeably. People usually just say Gullah Geechee. Um, yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. So would you say that, so we already established that based on where you are, that's how you would refer it to. Would you say that in that instant as well, there might be some differences in how they speak as well, or is it more or less the same?
Yeah. I was just reading about one island that I honestly had never heard of, and they were saying that there was a study done there, and they were looking at basically how people speak, and so it's because it's not, things were so isolated historically. Yeah, people speak different even within the corridor. You might have people from one island speaking one way, another island speaking. It's like kind of just like the Caribbean. You go from island to island. There's a little bit of difference, but there are a lot of similarities. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, good. Thanks for clearing that up for us. And you mentioned a lot of stuff that while you were speaking, I was like I got so excited because I remember watching a series on Netflix where they talked about Charleston, and there was also a feature of like Gullah Geechee like culture in it. This is specifically to food. So I highly recommend anyone who's like a foodie, but you also like a hint of culture and history in it. Check that out. It's on Netflix. It's called High on the Hog. So yeah.
I'm
I
actually
learned
gonna
a
check
lot
that
from
out.
what you mentioned. I was making connections because I'm like, oh my gosh, I remember Charleston being mentioned in the series and how they talked about it and bringing it back to everything. The same thing that you spoke about, about their culture being isolated or the people being isolated. So they got to hold on to a lot of their culture. They spoke about that a lot regarding the food. So yeah, check it out.
Yeah. And that almost reminds me of, like, if anybody's like interested in a, like, kind of a show. I don't know if you know the show Underground. It got canceled, but they had like two seasons. During like the second season, they were essentially in like Gullah Geechee, like Heartland. And it really, like, and the funny thing is, when I was watching it years ago, I was like, this, it feels like Gullah Geechee. And then I read some, or like I watched on YouTube, like the directors and like the actors talking about it, and they confirmed they actually, that's what they were seeking to portray. So I'm like, that's really great that they portrayed that, because it was different. I think a lot of people, when they think about, the South, they think about, like, especially in terms of slavery, they think about like maybe cotton, tobacco. But for us, like Gullah Geechee, people, we it was rice, and
Yeah,
indigo, stuff like that.
got you. Good point. Good point.
If you've been loving this video so far, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and also like and share. Leave us a little comment too, it helps us with the algorithm. If you don't want to miss out on other videos like this one, at the end of watching it, remember to turn on your post notifications. Now, let's get back to the
Right.
video.
So I know you mentioned there was some connection to the West Indian culture or other Caribbean islands. So I want to talk a bit about some of those like connections that you have recognized, especially since you mentioned, there's some influence of some of the persons actually coming from Barbados. It was enslaved folks who were brought from Barbados. So tell me a bit about that.
Yeah. So essentially, yeah, just some people decided to migrate from Barbados. Not exactly sure why they migrated there, but that was kind of like the first African presence in 1627, um, in Barbados. And then around 1670, they some of the people from Barbados, that include like the white people and their enslaved Africans, actually migrated to South Carolina. Um, and that, I mean, I've also read that even for Georgia, at first the majority of the enslaved Africans were from the West Indies as well. So there's
Oh.
that connection. There's also the fact that, for a lot of people, a lot of people always say Gullah Geechee people sound like people from the Bahamas, and I think so
Mm.
too. Honestly, if you put like them together, I would even struggle to tell them apart, because it's really that similar. And how that is because a lot of people think that it was like, oh, people from Bahamas went to like maybe the US, but it was really people from, the Gullah Geechee corridor. Apparently, right after the Revolutionary War, some people were loyal to Britain, and they wanted to kind of like stay, I guess, British. So they went from South Carolina, and they essentially settled in the Bahamas. And that was actually what like formed the base of the black population in the Bahamas at the time. So that is, a lot of people attribute that, like, as the reason why a lot of Gullah Geechee people sound like people from the Bahamas.
Oh, wow. Okay, so we're gonna get into the juicy part. We're gonna have some speaking going on, some teaching and all of that. So what I've done with like pretty much all my other, videos just like this, we try to get to like the basis of it, learning the sentence structures, learning phrases. So I want us to start off with very simple
Mhm.
personal pronouns. What are the
Mhm.
Gullah Geechee personal pronouns?
So the thing about that is, I guess you could say, unfortunately, Gullah Geechee is going through a decreolization process. So a lot of these pronouns, if people are living in the corridor now, they might say, "Oh yeah, we don't say that," but at one point you did. Like for example, just like in a lot of other places in the Caribbean, it used to be me or me, but now it's more
Mm.
like I or I.
Mm.
Mhm.
Got you.
Same
Okay.
thing
And then
with you.
with you. Mm.
It's gonna be you or yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's
Hmm.
easier because like we're talking about English, the English based one, right? So it's gonna be a bit easier compared to when I do
Yeah.
like the French based one. Okay, so me in some areas they might just say I, you is just yo. Um, we,
Same thing.
we.
We.
Okay,
But it might be a little shorter. Like we might in English like say we, but it's gonna be like we.
we.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. They, do they say them
Mm-hmm.
or
Them.
yeah,
Them.
them?
Yep.
Okay, don't
Them.
worry, guys. I'm gonna put the spelling on the screen, everything, so you can do your little analysis too and see how similar it is to your English Creole. Um, okay, so
Okay, so it's gonna be them or D. Because like I
them
said,
or they.
the decreolization,
Ah,
so it's kind of becoming closer to English. So in the past, a lot of people would say them in like first person pronoun, like they are
mm,
going, them go, but a lot of people now will more so say D, but still with the D.
gotcha. Yeah, just that it sounds more like they instead of them. Gotcha.
Oh, I totally forgot about one of our personal pronouns that is so similar.
Oh,
Hona, hona,
ah, oh no,
hona.
oh,
Like
oh no,
exactly. Uno. Yeah.
oh no, and
So some
that's
people will say
like
like Huna
you
children.
plural.
Yep,
Yeah,
you plural. Yep.
you plural. Oh no, okay. So then in terms of like possessive pronoun, then is it pretty much the same? So possessive pronouns like okay, mine, yours, hers. So I know for Jamaican patois, because that's the one I know the most, they would say like
Mhm.
fimi for mine.
Now that's a very creolized form right
Yeah.
there. You're not gonna hear that really in Gullah Geechee, but you might hear like meh, but a lot of the time it's gonna just be my. Um,
Got you.
but the interesting thing is when you get to the third person, like even for the subject pronouns like he, she is gonna be e, and
E.
possessive is e. Mm-hmm.
Huh.
And I know like that's one thing that like my grandmother like she can't she still says that, yeah, you know.
Okay. And you said
And
that's
for
for the personal and possessive pronoun.
yeah, for feminine and masculine. So like, you know,
E.
um, like sometimes like, you could be talking and you just want to say like her mother, imara.
Imada. Oh,
Yeah.
I would fit right in.
Yeah. It's I tell you, you would hear it definitely in Guyana. You might hear something similar.
Mm,
Um, so it's very but and that's a really you know creolized feature of Gullah Geechee where there's no distinction between masculine and feminine for like your pronouns, like it's just one,
mm.
and that's in French Creole too, as you probably talked about from
Yeah.
your other
Yeah.
videos.
That's true because we don't even do like this conjugation and thing like that. I'm pretty sure that's the same thing as well. Like we don't conjugate. It's just if it's like you're eating, you just say who the person, like the pronoun is and the action. That's why I love it. It's so simple. Like French and Spanish used to drive me crazy for that because you had to remember what was the
Oh yeah.
conjugation, and even though
No,
it
for
sounds
sure.
the same, but it's not really the same. It's spelled differently.
Yeah.
Okay, so all
That,
right then. So
that
let
kind of just reminds me that I don't know if you want to talk about vocabulary now, but there's definitely we
yes,
there's a word for eat. There's a special word
let's
for
go
eat.
ahead. Let's do some
Nyam.
vocab.
Nyam.
Yeah, you guys say nyam too?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Huh.
Yep.
Interesting. And that's funny because I'm trying to remember what do I usually hear them say in Belize and Creole. I think they just said eat. but it's like,
Mm-hmm.
with the tonality and everything of it is um like with a Belizean, accent or whatever, but like they would say it. I have to double check that because I don't know if like just like Gullah Geechee, if some countries are going through like a decreolization too, where once upon a time it was a specific thing and then it became more English like. So I
Yeah.
need to double check that. I'm trying to get more. So y'all, if you're watching this, send me an email so we can do more Creole based, English based Creoles and kind of show the similarities and differences. Okay. What are
I'm
some
not
you can
familiar.
think of the top of your head? I'm really trying to get out of my French Creole like
Um,
headspace right now.
back maybe not so much nowadays, but you might hear people saying picnic,
Oh,
but
picnic.
now a lot of
Okay.
the yeah, now a lot of time it's children.
Oh,
Yeah,
children.
children. Yeah.
Children. Damn, not losing the culture. I will forever say picnic.
Yeah, that's
Okay. And then, all right. So, in terms of greetings,
hmm
let me see if anything has changed in that. For greetings, how would I say good morning? Is it just morning, or depending on who you're talking to? Because if it's an elder, you have to say good morning.
yeah. I would say honestly, a lot of it is the same. For the same as you would say in English. There are some that probably would sound like you know, like like different from English. Like sometimes people might say how you is or how
How
you's
you is?
doing. You
Yeah.
know, there's stuff like that. I know there's a few that I personally never hear in my family, but they are apparently will you say that now? Will you say that now?
Hold on.
Yeah.
Let's do that one again.
Where you say that now?
What you said, Dana?
Like where you say de na.
Dana. So, what is that? What are you saying?
Like that could be like a greeting, like
Huh.
almost like in Jamaica you say where the pan.
Oh, what you said, Dana? Okay. Cool. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's pull some of these ones. What are some classic Gullah Geechee, like, expressions or phrases?
Mm-hmm. I've heard Seebnin for like good evening,
Seebnin.
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 I've heard Hedina, Hedina, like
Hidina.
hey, like hey,
Hey. Uh-huh.
de
And then,
na. Mm-hmm.
oh, Hidina.
Um, for like goodbyes, I definitely like I've heard some people say I ain't gonna hold you. That's like I'm not going to hold you, so like I'm gonna
Yeah.
let you.
Yeah.
Okay then is something I have heard a little bit, yeah.
That lets
But
them know that you're ready to wrap this convo up. Like, all right then.
yeah,
I'll see you later.
yeah. Hmm.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so those are some interesting things. I did include some. I have some phrases written down if you wanted to explore some of those
Let's
that,
get into the
that are from
phrases.
like the linguistic corpus.
Yes, let's do that.
So one of them is "it takes to kill him."
It takes to kill him.
Yeah, "it takes to kill him."
It takes to kill him. Is that like someone has a headache or an ache or something?
It's more like just like saying he killed him with a stick.
Oh, I was overthinking this. Okay.
Um, one word that might be new to you is "bakra." One sentence is
Bokra.
"bakra get the people corn." Bakra get the people corn.
Bokra get the people con.
Get the people corn.
Get the people con.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know what that means. I
So
can't even guess.
bakra is like one word that it used to refer to like like the master, like the plantation owner, but it now
Ah.
like people use it to refer to like all like white people.
Oh!
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure all of us have like something like that. Like a
Yeah.
code name or something. Okay. Interesting. Bokro. Okay.
Yeah.
What's
That
another one?
ECP that warm stuff by the fire. One more time.
You gonna have to, yeah.
ECP that warm stuff by the fire.
You see Peter like warming himself by the fire, right?
Yep, there we go.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
we see that da could be used as a present tense marker. Or sometimes people say just like in, Jamaica.
Yeah. Like him a warm himself.
Yeah.
Oh,
Hmm.
the Lizzie Curl say that as well. He don't want leave boy. Yeah, they would say da. He da.
Hmm.
Okay, I'm seeing the connections now. Okay, cool, cool.
But for, I guess, verbs that, like things that are repeated, a big thing, and this happens, you'll see it in Trinidad and Guyana, is does. And I know my grandmother says that all the time. I hear that all the time. Like,
He does
like,
galang bad.
yeah, you could say that. Or like in Gullah Geechee, some people say guine for like kind of like go, like guine gal.
Going gal. Going
Yeah,
going gal.
like
Ah,
yeah,
okay.
with a W sound. But does, like, yeah, like like you could say he does warm himself by the fire every Monday.
He does want himself by the fire. Okay, I get you. I get what you
Yeah,
mean.
like,
Huh.
or like you could say he always is talking to he mother on the phone.
He always
And
is
that
talking to.
one you have to know the context because could mean
Could be a he or she.
or she. Yeah. So it could be anyone.
So like I feel like in that context it's only if like the convo already started with you knowing who they're talking about and instead of them having to repeatedly say the person's name, they
Yeah.
just yeah. Yeah. Funny enough, I think this is mostly common in like mostly like rural areas. I remember growing up in Jamaica, the E would be referred to a he or she.
Hmm.
But I found that mostly in like the rural areas. But the minute you get to like Kingston or Montego Bay, like it can become very different. There's certain phrases you would never hear in those like parishes, but then you go to another one that's more rural,
Hmm.
and you'll learn new words and new terms. That's for sure. It's always an adventure when it comes on to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's true. And I think that's why, like, for me, I there people who are in the rural areas, like if you're on like one of the isolated sea islands, you probably have a lot more words that I just don't know because my family's from Tongue. you know
Yeah. Yep. Yep. True. And I find that most people who like they probably grew up with their grandmothers, they're the ones who know those terms. Like they have the best of both worlds. They can navigate in the city, but they can also navigate with those and sometimes it's like it makes the conversation for them like sweet or whatever they're trying to express. And you're just there looking at them like, huh? And they're like, oh girl, blah 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 blah. And they just say it in like the way you would probably understand and not their grandma's way. But
Yeah.
I find people who know how to do that, it's pretty cool because it's like still carrying on the culture in some kind of way.
Yeah. um I guess one interesting thing also is like the use of "si" for like that. And I know I hear that all the time in my family, um like you could say, John, tell him say don't go.
John Talim Sedog. Ah, okay. Safe for that.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, so if you guys are following along, so far we've learned you could use da or for what's the word? The it's for the, right?
Well, no, like present, like a present tense
Present.
marker. Yeah.
Present tense marker. That's what it
Or
was.
really like present progressive. Like if you want to say he is
Going.
going, he is
Uh-huh.
doing, he is eating, you know.
Okay. So what is then the past tense markers then? What would if I was saying like
Uh,
I ate?
been. Either you,
I've been
I've
eat.
heard, yeah, I've heard is, I've heard been, but yeah. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. And what about future? What would be the marker for if it's gonna happen in the future?
Go.
Go.
Say go. Yeah.
He gone. He
Like
gone till
you might got box him in his
was
face.
it?
You might go box him in his face. Yeah.
Go. Okay. All right. So that's the importance of like if you know those markers, you can more or less figure out what the sentence is saying.
Yeah, and it
Cool.
makes it a lot easier than going through like complex conjugations. Yeah, but that's, you'll find,
Honestly.
French Creole, English. There's just a marker, and that's it.
Yes, exactly. Cool. I'm interested to like really start exploring a lot more like English-based creoles and kind of see what the markers are for those
Hmm.
languages. And eventually, we can have like a whole like vocab and like phrase bank of all of these different creole languages to see if people can distinguish the differences and similarities. That would be cool.
Yep. I just found another one. Ya means here. Like
Here. Yeah.
come ya.
Come here. Oh, so yeah, I say come here too. Okay.
Yeah, just like in Jamaica. There's
Yeah.
juke.
Joke.
Okay, juke. Yep.
Joke.
Yep. Hmm.
Oh, okay. That's what it is, like the Jukenia side?
Yeah.
Or is it the other one? Because it could mean two different
Well, I think both. I think both too. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. It's really not as complex as, it's like once you get the hang of like those markers here and there, it's pretty I would take micro languages any days. Much simpler. And it's also I feel like we can express a bit more.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot
Has
more
more
expressive.
expression.
I love,
Yes.
speaking English Creole, like especially telling a story, with
Mm.
all of the like, sound
The
words and stuff like
antics.
that. And sometimes that has me so weak, listening to like some of like the elders tell a story, and I'm like, did you just invent a word for like the sound a boat makes?
I
It's like,
can't.
yeah,
Yes, the sound effects. They have
yes,
it unlocked. They have it on. Do they do the repetitive thing as well too, where it's like Shibad Sotil? Um, no, that is not a good example. I'm trying to find. It's like they repeat whatever
like
happened.
bad,
Yeah.
true,
Do they do
true.
that too for true,
Yep,
like for emphasis?
yep.
Okay. So okay, y'all. So if you haven't realized by now, basically we're cousins, okay? Because as you can see, we have very similar, words and phrases that we might use. It's just that sometimes maybe there's a difference here and there, but I'm pretty sure if we hear each other, we can understand. It's just certain terms you might need it explained
Yeah.
for you. So
I
yeah,
think that's
that
cool.
that
Like
that was
it's
a good
like
lesson.
mutually intelligible. Like if you put any
Mm,
English-based Creole speaker, two of them like together, they can have a
mm-hmm,
conversation.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember it actually when I saw the evidence of this was when I moved to Belize, and the only difference though is that I had to learn certain phrases that they use that I wasn't used to. For example, to skip classes, they said with a bang class. So bang class would be
Mm.
skipping class. I don't know if I ever used a specific phrase for it in Jamaica because I would not dare to like skip class. Like we were in university at this point and I was like at high
Yeah.
school when I was in Jamaica. So there was no skipping classes, okay? Um Another one would be hush. Hush in Jamaica is literally a comforting term. Like
Yeah.
although older people would also use it to like tell you to like maybe be quiet, but in Belize it is specifically only to tell you to be quiet. It's not a comforting word or anything. And so I remember that I actually stepped on my friend's toe and I said that. And he was so mad at me and I couldn't understand why. Whole time I was telling him to shut up instead of comforting him. So it's like those little differences here and there. But in a nutshell, I believe that we can understand each other just fine. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All
Yeah.
right. I think I got a good, a good bit that we can pretty much analyze, compare. Hopefully, I get more people on and we can do more of this. But I just want to say thank you. Thank you for taking the time to do this. This was fun. I did
Yeah.
not even realize we were like talking for so long. So, my viewers, bear with us. It was a very interactive conversation. Watch the whole video, please, and thank you. Um, and also, make sure you like, share, comment, and make sure you check out Marc. As I mentioned, he has his own YouTube channel and podcast called Creole Explained. So if you want to learn a bit more, especially about Gullah Geechee as well, I'm sure he has videos related to that in more detail on his channel. And yeah, just go ahead, check him out, support his channel as well. So thank you again for being here with me.
All right. Thank you so much.
And to you, my viewers, thank you for tuning in. I will see you in another episode. Bye.
Did you enjoy that video? Well, you'll enjoy more videos like it by clicking over here. So, tap to watch now.